And so, as we look at beautiful gifts on the planet, let me embarrass somebody a little bit here. I just can't wait. He's probably going, oh dear, here it comes. You never know, right? I mean, it's got to happen that way. I mean, you have to do something like that. Well, you know, we mentioned the name Ray Flynn, and here's a guy who was in there. I remember interviewing him the first time when he was running for mayor the first time. It's a little while ago, huh, Ray? I still have a tape of it. Aren't you glad I didn't bring it? You were really good. You were good, though. He was really good. And staunchly, you know, here you see him running the first time, and then you see all of the feminist rhetoric against this guy. It just kind of rolled right over. There it went. And then it got tougher and tougher and tougher. And you talk, you know, to be a mayor of the city of Boston for, you know, 3 terms, and then go off to be an ambassador to the Holy See. It's remarkable to see someone who could have been someone very different. You know, he was like a star ball player. He can sprint like crazy back in those days, as I understand, just run like the wind. You know, you'd think somebody get a big eagle on him and they'd go off not in a public service direction, but they'd be a self-service direction. But Ray continued, and his pro-life stance never wavered. And so it is a great privilege and honor, and it just gives my heart joy to see him step forward today, because when you talk about heroes, he's going to teach us about some, but I think he is, so I like to embarrass him with that. Let's give him a round of applause.
MC that doesn't remember the old days. You get some young person there who just talking about the present day, not 40 years ago. I'm really honored to be with you this afternoon. I've been to this event many, many times, my wife and I, over the years. And I always receive a great deal of inspiration, encouragement when I hear the various speakers. Sometimes I would be out in the audience and listening, absorbing the great oratory of people talking to us about the movement, the pro-life movement in the United States. I think I was part of the first Assembly for Life here, and so I've followed, of course, the pro-life movement all these many, many years. And that's when Ann called me. She's right. I was actually in the hospital. And I was saying my rosary, actually, and I got a phone call, I got an email from Ann, and saying that she wanted me to present the award to the Hannafins. And when you're in the hospital, you know, you don't know if you're going to leave. You get a call about pro-life, and that's God's mission. You certainly will show up no matter what happens. So that's why I'm here. I chose this topic. It's maybe a little out of the ordinary in some respects. It's called Pro-Life Heroes. And if you'll indulge me, I'll come to the realization of why I want to talk about this topic for many, many years, believe it or not. We've all heard great people talking about updates on the pro-life movement. And in this case, in this great Faneuil Hall, I've been here when they've had world leaders. I remember bringing Lech Lesser in here. I brought in Corazon Aquino, the president of the Philippines, gave her that same award, the Paul Revere Ball, emblematic of the highest tribute you can give anybody in Boston, the famous Paul Revere Ball. But I chose to, I wanted to talk about this pro-life heroes. You know, every great movement must have heroes which people can look up to and admire. I certainly have had over the years. People that they can talk about with pride and admiration. People whose determination and sacrifice to the causes they believe in inspires to people to look beyond personal self-interest to achieve common ground. Regardless of polls, political party, personal fame, people whose impact inspired a movement to come together and lead to a great and important result. Well, too often we are hesitant and apprehensive in bestowing the title of hero to another person very quickly, and perhaps for good reason. In too many movements, the title of hero is prematurely given to someone who receives a lot of publicity, or worse, is a self-promoter. Hollywood, Madison Avenue, those agencies that do public relations work are great at creating stars, products, and making icons. They can get millions of people to wait in line all night long to watch the next day a 2-star rated movie, buy their clients' record albums, and get even kids to buy jeans, which are the latest version of worn by a teen model idol. It is how the American system works. Let me give you one example of what I'm talking about. One survey that I read several years ago confirmed the influence of public relations and advertising in politics by asking people in a relatively large community, okay, you and a majority of your neighbors voted for candidate Y for public office. Well, do you know him? Or do you know much about him, or what he or she stands for? The response overwhelmingly was, no, not really. I liked what he had to say, however, in the advertisements. Paid 30-second political TV ads. That's how images are made in that kind of business. Every important movement must have leaders that they can look up to, people they can admire and will follow. If that person is not a parent, you've got to create him or her. That person oftentimes is not without fault, even somebody who may have made mistakes along the way. And you can be sure that their enemies will dig up and exploit them. In this internet era, the only way to escape criticism and ridicule is to not get involved in anything, to become a critic yourself. That obviously is not you, it's not the people up here. Most of you know prominent people who have been admired over the years. In my case, I'm not talking about family, I'm talking about prominent public people. I had the privilege of knowing a few great people as well. In fact, I even worked actively with them. Their fame is well known. Even though they are respected, admired people, I have to tell you, I have publicly debated critics and enemies of them who work every day trying to tear down their reputation and record of these exceptional, remarkable people. John Paul II and Mother Teresa are two names and two heroes of mine, friends. Their compassion and love for the poor, the weak, the defenseless was boundless. These two people were as outstanding in their respected field as any modern political leader, business person, or scientists that we grew up reading about. What I personally observed and experienced from these two moral icons was far greater than anything I learned from watching and studying any United States president or prime minister who I worked with. Pope John Paul II's message was not a product of the media, Hollywood, or Madison Avenue, but rooted in the truth personal values, and commitment to the common good. As I started out by saying, every great and important movement must have heroes, that people that they can believe in. Well, the reason why I was so excited to receive this invitation from Anne and the Mass Citizens for Life, because I want to tell you about some heroes that I've met who don't get that kind of notoriety and publicity that I think they deserve. Pro-life movement has and does today have such leaders. Leaders we should recognize publicly and, yes, elevate. I can list a few, but my wife Kathy and I attended the memorial services for Dr. Mildred Jefferson at Harvard University a couple of months ago. Something hit me that I should have known about. Now, I always admired Mildred. We worked together for many, many years. The first pro-life bill introduced in the Massachusetts legislature, immediately after the Supreme Court decision. In fact, a couple of days after that decision. What I saw at that Harvard Memorial Hall memorial service at Harvard really moved me. Young men in attendance who seemed to be college or law students, maybe from Harvard, serving as ushers and sitting in the memorial chapel, openly weeping in the passing of Dr. Mildred Jefferson. No media were on hand to cover the service. If they had, they would have witnessed a very special, in fact, a remarkable event. The passing of an icon, perhaps. But Dr. Mildred Jefferson is not the only person who fits the reputation of special, if not great, and if not a great American human rights leader. And that is what pro-life leaders are. I would put Cardinals O'Connor, Law, O'Malley, Father Frank Pavone, Archbishop Dolan of New York in that category. But so would I put Harvard law professor Mary Ann Glendon, attorney Philip Moran, Dr. Joseph Stanton certainly, Professors Robbie George, Hadley Arkes, attorneys Tom Harvey and Bob Joyce, Mary Ann Lutine, Tom Flatley, who was mentioned already, Ray Ruddy, Royce Scapato, Dwight Duncan, Joe Mulligan, since deceased, my lawyer at City Hall, and Joe Riley. A courageous young lawyer, not named Mark Renzi, in that same league. And I'd put a few good politicians in there as well, like Charlie Doyle, Eddie King, former governor, Jimmy Craven, Henry Hyde of Illinois, and former Boston Mayor John Collins. I'd also give special praise to judges like Frank O'Connor, Joe Nolan, and Anton Scalia. But most of all, I'd highlight the fact that the pro-life movement, the pro-life human rights movement, has some of the greatest American families that I have ever experienced, ever met in my life. The Hanifins, whom we honor today, being just one of them. But we know that there are others deeply admired by all of us here today and proud members of the pro-life human rights movement. Other names immediately come to mind, I'm sure, and I could list several other names as well as you. I'm making a point that we need pro-life leaders to be elevated so it's somebody we can really look up to and talk about. My main point is this: get out in the arena, the public arena, and defend and promote your values. And yes, our heroes. The people we admire. Don't let critics say that the members of the pro-life movement are getting old and dying off. Remind the media that more young people are joining the pro-life ranks, and those numbers are growing. If you go to the march in Washington, D.C. on January 22nd, you'll see what I mean. Tell the critics to see all the thousands of young high school and college students who walk in that march. You ask yourself, work hard to help the pro-life cause. And don't give our political enemies, who are quite powerful, don't give them any ammunition to discredit pro-life activists. They certainly will do that on their own. Take my word for it. Lastly, get involved in civic events. Don't be afraid to let the local press know how you feel. Challenge the status quo. That's the American way. But most importantly, help promote the public image and reputation of our pro-life leaders in the press and now, most importantly, on the internet. Keep your message brief, positive, and when possible, even humorous. Encourage people and invite them to your greatness like you would your own children. We have American heroes among us, my friends. We don't have to look to Washington or to the State House. Let me conclude with this. I've known saints and I've known sinners. I've worked with popes, presidents, and prime ministers. Some of the most caring and decent people I've ever met are people committed to the protection and the dignity of all life. The world knows Mother Teresa and knows John Paul II. Our job is to make sure they also know other pro-life heroes, like Dr. Mildred Jefferson, Dr. Stanton, and so many of our courageous priests and nuns and volunteers and deacons, and the job that they are doing, and lay people like you, like Phil Moran, like Mary Ann Glendon, and others that I've mentioned. Not everyone agrees with us. That'll come as no surprise to you, including many elected officials. Our objective should be to promote and support our friends, not a political party. But we do have to learn to become more politically effective. Let me move to another topic that has been on my mind, and I'm glad to share it with you today. The recent violence and killing of Christians outside of a Catholic church in Egypt was yet another example of our weak political voice and how that has become in America today. Radical Islamists killing and driving millions of Christians out of the Middle East. And I can't even get prominent members of the United States Senate to respond to our plea. Religious genocide taking place in the world. And I ask you here in the collective audience, where is the outrage? These are crimes against humanity, and our country and our international community are afraid to speak out. Now let's ask you owe nobody anything politically. You pay your taxes, you obey the laws. It's time you got a little respect in return. My friends, we have a job to do. Leave here today more determined and committed than ever before to the principle, the important principle, that was the foundation of my political career. There is more that unites us than the narrow issues divide us. Show that the world that we are determined and united in our defense of the unborn. I want to thank the Massachusetts Citizens for Life for all that you do. You are very much part of a critical movement in America. to protect the God-given rights of all people, including the unborn. This peaceful assembly here today is in contrast, think about it, it is in contrast to the hatred and the violence that we too often see in society today, even just last weekend. We must encourage our politicians to help promote the common good. That's why your responsible efforts are an inspiration and vital to our nation. Let me especially thank Ian Fox for all that you do, for inviting me to address this Assembly of Life here today. Your work and commitment is of great inspiration to us. To all of you out there, stay determined and remember something that I always said to my mother told me many, many years ago. Like, stay with me all through my life. Remember, all things are possible. All things are possible with God. Thank you very, very much.